Plato, one of the greatest philosophers of all time, founder of the Academy. Plato's ideas form the basis of the social and political sciences and have been discussed by many generations of scholars. How did he see the ideal man, society, and state? How do state systems evolve? And why did he consider democracy a bad form of organization? Answers to these and other questions will be in this video. So, let's get started. Plato's book, The Republic, is structured as a dialogue between Socrates and five men: Cephalus, Polemarchus, Thrasymachus, Glaucon, and Adeimantus. The Republic begins by posing the question of justice and injustice at the interpersonal level. The dialogue then gradually shifts from private justice to justice within the state. The fundamental reason for the emergence of the state is the inability of a man independently meet his needs, like food, house, clothing, and so on. In need of many things, people come together and live together and help each other. From here, Socrates begins to construct the elements of an ideal state. In the ideal state, there is a division of labor according to needs and talents. As Socrates points out, one man cannot practice many arts with success. To provide the basic necessities, the state needs to consist of a minimum 4 or 5 people. However, participants of the dialogue agree that at some point, meeting basic needs is no longer enough. So the state will be expanded by hunters, nurses, barbers, physicians, actors, players, dancers, and so on. Thus, the state can be expanded until it ceases to be unified. This development and expansion of the state will lead to conflict with its neighbors. A slice of our neighbor's land will be wanted by us for pasture and tillage, and they will want a slice of ours. If, like ourselves, they exceed the limit of necessity and give themselves up to the unlimited accumulation of wealth, so there will be war. Here Socrates makes an interesting remark. Now we have discovered war to be derived from causes which are also the causes of almost all the evils in states, private as well as public. Thus, it is necessary to create an army. This is how the guardian class comes into being. The ideal guardian must be brave. His soul is to be full of spirit, have the qualities of a philosopher, a desire to learn and will to be nimble and strong. Then Socrates goes to the education of a guardian. He should be educated in music and gymnastics. Both are necessary, because those who practice only gymnastics become rougher than they should, and those who practice only music are soft. Moreover, he asserts that women should receive the same training and can participate equally with men in the defense of the state. He then moves on to the need to control the myths on which children are raised. The first principle is that God must be represented not as the author of all things, but of good only. And the second principle is, with God is no variableness or change of form. Then he moves on to a way of life. To prevent the guardians from becoming bribe takers and greed men, he stated that none of them should have any property of his own beyond what is absolutely necessary. Neither should they have a private house or store closed against anyone who has a mind to enter. The provisions should be only such as are required by trained warriors who are men of temperance and courage. They should agree to receive from the citizens a fixed rate of pay, enough to meet the expenses of the year and no more, and they will go to mass and live together like soldiers in a camp. And they alone of all the citizens may not touch or handle silver or gold, or be under the same roof with them, or wear them, or drink from them. And this will be their salvation, and they will be the saviors of the state. Moreover, all the wives of these husbands must be in common, and no one live with anyone separately. And the children, too, must be kept in common, and the father not know which child is his, and the child not know who his father is. Otherwise, if they ever acquired homes or lands or money of their own, they will become housekeepers and husbandmen instead of guardians, enemies and tyrants instead of allies of other citizens, hating and being hated, plotting and being plotted against, and they will pass their whole life in much greater terror of internal than of external enemies. Then the dialogue turns to the topic of rulers. The best should be in charge of the state. People who are most valiant in their views and who believe that everything the best should be done for the state. Socrates identifies three classes of men: lovers of wisdom, lovers of honor, and lovers of gain. And of course, he believes that lovers of wisdom, philosophers, have the necessary qualities for rule. They are wise, valiant, temperate, and just. Quoting a passage from Book 6, truthfulness, they will never intentionally receive into their mind falsehood, which is their detestation, and they will love the truth. However, it's very intriguing that in the Book 3, Socrates said that only the rulers have the privilege of lying in their dealings, either with enemies or with their own citizens, may be allowed to lie for the public good. One of these lies for public good is his idea of the Mother Earth. People are to be told that their youth was a dream, and the education and training which they received is an appearance only. In reality, during all that time, they were being formed and fed in the womb of the earth. There, they themselves and their arms and appurtenances were manufactured. When they were completed, the earth, their mother, sent them up, and so their country being their mother and also their nurse, they are bound to advise for her good, and to defend her against attacks. And her citizens they are to regard as children of the earth, and their own brothers. Citizens, we shall say to them in our tale, you are brothers, yet God has framed you differently. Some of you have the power of command, and in the composition of these he has mingled gold. Therefore also they have the greatest honor. Others he has made of silver to be auxiliaries. Others, again, who are to be husbandmen and craftsmen, he has composed of brass and iron. The reason for this is the desire to bring happiness to the entire state rather than to a particular group, because it is in such a state that he expects to find justice. The perfect state is therefore wise, valiant, temperate, and just. Socrates stresses that the wealth and poverty both bring tension to the society. The one is the parent of luxury in indolence, and the other of meanness and viciousness, and both of discontent. Socrates distinguishes 5 types of state, and their corresponding human natures. For him, the perfect state is either a monarchy or an aristocracy, accordingly as rule is exercised by one distinguished man or by many. Such is the good and true city or state, and the good and true man is of the same pattern, and if this is right, every other is wrong, and the evil is one which affects not only the ordering of the state, but also the regulation of the individual soul, and is exhibited in 4 forms. Timocracy, the government of honor, arises out of aristocracy. This is happening because of disagreement within or between 2 classes. When discord arose, then the 2 races were drawn different ways. The iron and brass fell to acquiring money and land and houses and gold and silver, but the gold and silver races, not wanting money but having the true riches in their own nature, inclined towards virtue and the ancient order of things. There was a battle between them, and at last they agreed to distribute their land and houses among individual owners, and they enslaved their friends and maintainers, whom they had formerly protected in the condition of freemen, and made of them subjects and servants, and they themselves were engaged in war and in keeping a watch against them. And the new government, which thus arises, will be a form intermediate between oligarchy and aristocracy, mixture of good and evil. In the fear of admitting philosophers to power because they are no longer had to be simple or earnest, but are made up of mixed elements, and in turning from them to passionate and less complex characters who are by nature fitted for war rather than peace. The democratic man should have more of self-assertion and be less cultivated, and yet a friend of culture, and he should be a good listener, but not speaker. Such a person is apt to be rough with slaves, unlike the educated man, who is too proud for that. And he will also be courteous to freemen and remarkably obedient to authority. He is a lover of power and a lover of honor, claiming to be a ruler not because he is eloquent or on any ground of that sort, but because he is a soldier and has performed feats of arms. He is also a lover of gymnastic exercises and of the chase. The accumulation of gold in the treasury of private individuals is the ruin of Timocracy. This is how the oligarchy emerges. And then one, seeing another grow rich, seek to rival him, and thus the great mass of the citizens become lovers of money. And so they grow richer and richer, and the more they think of making a fortune, the less they think of virtue. As riches and rich men are honored in the state, virtue and virtuous are dishonored. And so at last, instead of loving contention and glory, men become lovers of trade and money. Then they next proceed to make a law which fixes a sum of money as the qualification of citizenship. As the oligarchy is more or less exclusive, they allow no one whose property falls below the amount fixed to have any share in the government. In oligarchy, division is inevitable. Such a state is not one, but two states, the one for poor, the other of rich men, and they are living on the same spot and always conspiring against one another. Oligarchies are incapable of carrying on any war. Either they arm the multitude and then they are more afraid of them than of the enemy, or if they do not call them out in the hour of battle, they are oligarchs, indeed, few to fight as they are few to rule. And at the same time, their fondness for money makes them unwilling to pay taxes. A man in the oligarchy no longer has ambition and passion. Humbled by poverty, he takes to money-making, and by mean and miserly savings and hard work gets a fortune together. He worships and admires only riches and rich men. This individual only satisfies his necessary appetites and confines his expenditure to them. His other desires he subdues under the idea that they are unprofitable. Next come democracy. The love of wealth and the spirit of moderation cannot exist together in the citizens of the same state to any considerable extent. One or the other will be disregarded. And in oligarchical states, from the general spread of carelessness and extravagance, men of good family have often been reduced to beggary. Democracy comes into being after the poor have conquered their opponents, slaughtering some and banishing some, while to remainder they give an equal share of freedom and power, and this is the form of government in which the magistrates are commonly elected by lot. In democracy, a man may say and do what he likes. The individual is clearly able to order for himself his own life as he pleases. In this kind of state there will be the greatest variety of human natures. Socrates is critical of democratic state. He reasons it this way: there being no necessity, I said, for you to govern in the state, even if you have the capacity, or to be governed unless you like, or go to war when the rest go to war, or to be at peace when others are at peace. And is not their humanity to be condemned in some cases quite charming? Have you not observed how in a democracy many persons, although they have been sentenced to death or exile, just stay there they are and walk about the world? The gentleman parades like a hero and nobody sees or cares. These and other kindred characteristics are proper to democracy, which is a charming form of government, full of variety and disorder, and dispensing a sort of equality to equals and unequals alike. The democratic man is honored only when he shows his favor to the crowd. Last of all comes the tyranny. Tyranny springs from democracy in the same manner as democracy from oligarchy. Democracy has her own good of freedom, of which the insatiable desire brings her to dissolution. When a democracy which is thirsting for freedom has evil cupbearers presiding over the feast and has drunk too deeply of the strong wine of freedom, then, unless her rulers are very amenable and give a plentiful draught, She calls them to account and punishes them and says that they are cursed oligarchs. The citizens become so sensitive, they chafe impassionately at the least touch of authority, and at length, as you know, they cease to care even for the laws, written or unwritten. They will have no one other than. The tyrant springs out of working class. At first he appears as a protector of the people, and the protector of the people is like him having a mob entirely at his disposal. He is not restrained from shedding the blood of kinsmen. By the favorite method of false accusation, he brings them into court and murders them, making the life of man to disappear, and with unholy tongue and lips tasting the blood of his fellow citizens. Some he kills and others he banishes. However, at first, in the early days of his power, he is full of smiles and he salutes everyone whom he meets. He to be called a tyrant who is making promises in public and also in private, liberating debtors and distributing land to the people and his followers, and wanting to be kind and good to everyone. He is always stirring up some war or other, in order that the people may require a leader. He will impoverish the people by payment of taxes, thus they will be compelled to devote themselves to their daily wants and therefore will be less likely to conspire against him. The tyrannical man is possessed by lust. Increasingly, such a person's desire for pleasure surpasses his former whims and disempowers them. He has an urgent need to plunder, or else he will have to endure unbearable agony and suffering. In all his life he has never been friends with anyone. He is forever either dominating or enslaved. His tyrannical nature has never tasted either freedom or true friendship. Power inevitably makes him envious, treacherous, unjust, unfriendly, and wicked. He supports and nurtures all kinds of evil. All this will gradually develop in him even more. He will be extremely unhappy and make his entourage the same. So there are 5 types of state and human natures. At the end, I would like to add that this book is also known for the allegory of the cave, but we will not talk about that. Instead, I would suggest you to watch the movie The Conformist by the great Italian director Bernardo Bertolucci, where the main characters discuss Plato and his allegory of the cave. Have you seen this movie and do you remember this scene? Please write it in the comments. Thank you for watching and have a good day.